Ilana, you're on.
Okay, well, it looks like we are on already. David, now, usually on a Thursday, we get a massive introduction, and I think you need no introduction at this stage, so I think we can go for it, and we can chat through it. David Shapiro, this morning we picked up this person, I realized that you are in it, we are both in it, and people are interested. I see that a few of you have come on already. Usually on a Thursday, we get insights, we get inspired. We have long chats about what to do in lockdown, how to get out of it, how to be inspired, how to be resilient, how to become leopards and adapt leopardology. And today we're talking about our money. So if you just joined in, we're joined by David Shapiro, who's providing us basic tools to navigate through the complex world of investments. Hopefully with this webinar throughout tonight, you are welcome to ask questions. We'll be able to be ready with knowledge and walk with knowing how to work with our money. David, can you hear me? Because I can hear an echo on my side. I just want to make sure I'm not in my usual studio. I'm in Cape Town. I just landed. So can you hear me well?
There's a bit of an echo. It's not coming as clear as, but I can hear. I can make out what you're saying.
Okay, I just want to see also if I'm live in two places. I'm going to make sure that I close everything else. But I can see that someone says there is an echo, so we're going to try our best. All right, David,
can I try something?
Sure. All right.
Can you hear?
I can hear you fine. Yeah.
I just want to know if this took the echo away, if it's better this way.
Yeah. Did you have an extra speaker with you?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. I think you were the problem, David. So let's start with that.
You know what happened. I mean, one of the problems is that in lockdown, there's Zoom, there's Skype, there's Teams, there's all different kinds of software, and where you get old people like myself, who are not as proficient as everybody else as the youngsters. I'm constantly looking for the three dots and being shouted at. Look at those three dots, touch that, and try and adjust. So it's not the first time that I've been shouted at or have messed up the webinar. So I apologize.
Well, listen, the one thing that we didn't ask you to come for today is for tech knowledge, because the one thing we know that you are known for is investing. And I have to also say, the few times that I've been around you, I know that the last time we chatted, I think we were at a simcha, we were at a wedding. And because we have your time, the first thing we start talking to you about is our money and investing. Let's start with that. I mean, we are in an interesting time, and you just touched on it now. Yesterday, we had a speech from our president. We've had these chats throughout lockdown. We look at our money, and the first thing I want to know from you as an economist is who during this time has made money?
Lots of people. There has been money made, and money's been made in technology. It hasn't been necessarily been made in South Africa. And I think, Ilana, one of the beauties about the development that we've seen in technology is that we're no longer confined to investing in a small space. We're not restricted. What technology has done is that it's opened up avenues to invest all over the world. In other words, I used to have a slide, and I used to say, why invest in a spaza when you can invest in a supermarket? People took offense to that. They said, "Oh, don't call the JSE a spaza." So I called it a convenience store. I said, "Okay, why invest in a convenience store when you can invest in the world?" And what we're seeing now, and I mean the fact that we're actually on Zoom is up over 500% this year. So if you would have bought Zoom shares at the beginning of the year, they've been listed for about a year in the United States, your money would have increased 5 times. Right. So I'm saying we'll come back to South Africa because it's important to understand where we are. But I think the question that you asked me is that, where can we make money? Have people made money? Yes, they have. They have made it, and they've made it in the stocks that we've used by being restricted at what they call it stay-at-home stocks, because it's changed our habits. We know it's changed our habits. It's changed our lifestyle. It's changed the way we communicate with people, the way that we entertain, and so on. So those businesses have been blowing out the lights and doing incredibly well. So I think when we start to talk investment, you've got to open your horizons to what's happening around the world. And if you want to explore that with pleasure, we can do that down the line.
It seems like there's a few other people that have joined us tonight. A warm welcome to all of you. David Shapiro is our guest for tonight. We've been talking all kinds of exciting things every Thursday. Today we're talking about your money, and you're welcome to come to our chat line, ask us some questions with pleasure, providing us some basic tools to navigate it. You just said something that I just enjoy. You said habit. Now, usually in these kind of chats, we talk about triggers, when it comes to psychology. When it comes to money and our habits, things have changed so much. I mean, in businesses, I hate the word new normal, we start getting to a place, a word actually that I learned here was new average. We get to a place where there's a new average. How do we even adjust our money and our thought patterns and our habits to this evolving world that has been put to us so quickly? COVID gave us no time to adjust. COVID gave us I had unit trusts, and then one night I had 3 glasses of wine and I made a 20,000 Rand investment by accident. And now I don't even know where it is because we're in COVID and we don't know what we are doing. So what would you say if we're adjusting our corporate to being a little bit more creative, if we are adjusting our schools to be safe and online? Who do we even learn from what to do with our money?
Okay, well, it's this could take the whole night.
The answer should be you.
Ilana, you know what's important. What do I do every day? And I'm saying I'm a professional money manager, but I keep up with the news. I wake up in the morning and I turn the TV on to see what happened overnight, while I was sleeping, what was happening. Now, why I'm saying that is that one has to understand what's happening in the world around you. It's absolutely imperative that you know the news. You don't have to know every little thing that happens, but you have to be aware of what how circumstances are changing. And from an investment point of view, you have to keep up with investment. I don't believe in the so-called, put these shares in your bottom drawer and never watch. That doesn't work anymore because a lot of the industries that we knew decades ago, in fact, the best example I can give you, if you go back a decade, if you only go back 10 years, maybe 15 years, the companies that used to dominate the American market, the US market, were all the energy companies, Exxon, Chevron, all businesses related to the development or the processing oil, exploring for oil and so on, producing oil. Now today, if you go fast forward 10 years, those companies are no longer there. Yes, they're still big, but they've been overtaken by the Apples and the Alphabets and the Amazons and the Facebooks and the Alibabas and all these technology businesses. So you can't say, put the shares in your bottom drawer. And we still have that. Legacy issues still dominate people's sentiment. So you've got to keep up to date. And that's why I think in the last seminar I had here, I said, what I miss about lockdown is I miss young people. Because with young people, they teach you what's happening. You learn, you see what they're wearing, you see what phone they're using, you see which apps how they're living their lifestyles and so on. And it's through that interaction that you learn to see how the world's changing, how these habits are changing. So we can't keep looking backwards to go forwards. You've got to keep your eye on what's ahead of you. You can't put it on a GPS and say, yeah, I'm going to reach my investment destination. Not at all. So I think it's very, you raised a very important point that, how do you do it? you've got to look after your financial health in the same way as you do your physical, mental, and spiritual health. Once you've got money, you have an obligation to look after it.
Well, you've just said a few things that caught my attention, and you're talking about when you have money, you have that obligation. From a young age, we taught that you are able to judge or even know people by how they take their drink and also how they take care of their pockets. And so what if during lockdown you didn't make any money and you have none to invest, but that's your interest? Where does one start when you have less than your friends, or when you have a little bit and you have an interest? I'll tell you what bothered me today. So we're in level 1, and the Afrikaans, I actually mentioned you on the radio this morning. So the Afrikaans news goes out in Johannesburg, and the newsreader says, any hospitality industry roll sy moue op, which means the hospitality industry, they're rolling up their sleeves, they're getting ready to work, and getting ready to do. And I realized that some of us want to go on holiday, and some of us actually just wants to hold on to our cash because we don't know what the COVID and pandemic is doing next year. So my next question is, okay, so the industry is, everything's opening and we want this holiday, you're craving to be out there, but it's costing money. What do you prioritize? Do you prioritize the fact that something unexpected might happen again? Or do you hold on to the fact that you've got a little bit to manage with now? Do I invest, not keep it? What do I do with my money at the moment?
You've got to find the balance. You've got to go on holiday. I mean it. You know what I mean? And you've got to save. And you've got to save. You've got to do both. You can't just become a recluse. You can't just sit in a room and then count your money and that. You've got to find that balance in life, because you need that. You need mental stimulation. You need that freedom as well, so that you can live properly. That you've got to put some input into your soul as well. So I think people misunderstand that, misunderstand saving. They think you've got to be frugal. The more frugal you are, the better saver you are. No, not at all. You just got to be sensible. In other words, you've got to get the balance. And the younger you start with that balance, the better it is. In other words, you've got to get you got to get your lifestyle preferences as well. Your first car doesn't need to be one of those fancy red or black BMWs or a new SUV. It doesn't need to be that. You can get away with a Qashqai. What's Nissan Qashqai? I don't know. Ask Rabbi Masinda what his favorite car. You know what I mean? So you don't need the Lexus as well. Tell him, we're quite happy with a little. I drive a Mini, and I've driven a Mini for the last 15 years. And it's fine. So you don't need. That's where you've got to find the balance. And kids love it. As soon as they get their first paycheck, they've got to hit Zara or wherever they are and just go mad. Yeah, it's fine for your first paycheck, but the second paycheck, start that sensible living, and you can get that balance between. So you'll go to H&M. You won't go to Zara, or you won't go to which. So.
I'm more interested in you driving the Mini for 15 years than going to H&M at this stage. So, but it brings me to my next question. And I mean, I've really enjoyed seeing how even you have evolved and adapted your habits to modern. And you just said it earlier, just because we're getting on with years doesn't mean we need to have old habits. We can't get stuck. We're going to need to be informed if we want to be current, even about our finances. What about that point that we're reaching where you want to bypass the financial advisor? I mean, do we still go and see someone? I'll tell you what has happened in lockdown, which is quite interesting amongst my age peers and also, I guess, the industry that I'm in. So people every 5 minutes send you a link and they go, you know what, you should try this. Oh, I know this guy in Namibia that if you give him 100K, he can put it away for you at high risk, and then this happens. And, the one pyramid scheme seems as lucrative as another. And then someone sends me this easyequities.co.za, and I'm thinking, but who's running this site? Can they see my credit card details? Then Netflix launches some documentary on how Google was started and how Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg and all his henchmen actually knew what they were doing when they started. And you're thinking, me put my credit card details online to invest money. Maybe I do want to see Gert van Westhuizen at Momentum, Standard Bank, wherever you do your business, and just converse with a person, do it bypass all of these people and just become tech savvy and, get out there and start trusting. Do we need to trust in order to collaborate with our money because we work so hard for it?
Yeah. You know what? I wrote a Rosh Hashanah article now, and it's for Stan Smukler, and everybody knows Stan, and he comes out every year with his Rosh Hashanah. Well, this time it's a link, and I just wrote about some of the mistakes that people made. I just said that. This time after everybody sits at the Seder, that's where they start talking to their friends, exactly like you were talking. And you get the phone call on the Monday to say, why didn't you buy me Sabanya like my cousin Milton or my auntie Sarah? Why didn't you do this? And everybody brags about how wonderfully they've done. They never brag, or they never tell you how badly they've done or the money they lost. We love to, brag about our successes. So it's quite an important issue that you've actually brought up. And what surprises me, what is absolutely staggering, is how easy people part with their money. Now, the same people, when you ask them to go buy a fridge, they go start and they do all the research they can about a fridge, or they do all the research about a stove. Or even if they're going on holiday, they know every place where it comes to somebody sitting behind them or going to the Seder table or going to shul, and they say, you know what? Chet told me to buy this or go buy Bitcoin or go. Boy, that money, they part with money so easy. Suddenly, all the research, these level-headed people just lose all sense and just let their money go. And it absolutely staggers me how easy it is to get people to part with their money, just offering them something. There's a well-known rabbi. Unfortunately he's passed, and I was very close to him. I still manage the money for his wife, etc. And he was a wonderful man, and he used to love to talk to me about the stock market. And he'd always say, Dovidal, look, I got this, and it's a guarantee, or these people phone me from Singapore, and this is a guaranteed, I'm going to double my money. And I'd say, and he thought, hold on a sec, God's talking to me. I said, no, just do me a favor, just tear it up. Don't reply, just leave it. No, but maybe. No. So Ilona, what's the answer? The answer is that you've got to apply your mind as well. That's what I said. When you've got money, there's this obligation to understand what's happening. And while you might not want to do it yourself, you've got to be in a position when somebody advises you to ask the right questions. You know what I mean? Yeah. In other words, if you're not satisfied, make absolutely sure you know what they're selling you. In other words, you know everything, because so many people buy something and then the next day they wake up and they say, I don't know what I bought. He came to, the chap came to me and he sold me this and I bought this, but I don't know what it is. So if you're not going to undertake it yourself, which is not a difficult task, it's not difficult. And if you are going to go to an advisor, and I'm not saying don't, make sure that you know and you can converse and you're happy and that you've got the trust. You feel that the person advising you is trustworthy. I don't like the word trust. I never trust a person who says to me, trust me. That's one thing. When a person says me, trust me, that's the last thing I do. But I mean, you've got to develop in the same way as you go to a doctor, a dentist, a gynecologist, your urologist, whoever it is, your heart doctor. You've got to have that same faith in that person as you do in your financial advisor.
If you just joining us, legendary expert David Shapiro is joining us to talk about our money and also our money in and out of lockdown. We're talking about basic tools, and so far we're talking about things like trust, the fact that he's driving a Mini 15 years later, the same car, because he's saying maybe you don't want to part with your maybe you don't want to part with your car. You have some quick fire that are, because I see the time is also getting on, and please, you're welcome to ask some questions. This is your money and your investments, and we want you to ask questions. If you can give me one-line answers to these, and I quickly want to know this, what's the difference between passive and active funds?
Okay, so a passive fund would be this. I'm going to simplify it. Would be either a unit trust or like a tracker fund, something that tracks an index. In other words, an index is nothing more than a measure of how the market's doing. And the all share index, for example, of the top 40 is nothing more than a basket of 40 shares. So what they do is you can convert that into an instrument that tracks that index. That's passive. Active is where you start to manage your own shares. You'll buy 10 shares or 20 odd shares. I'm an active manager in the sense that my whole philosophy is I say I want to buy the best 20 companies in the world. And I go and search for what I think are the best 20 companies. Of course, they're not the best 20 companies in the world because there's something, I don't know how many, it must be 40,000. So for me to be arrogant to say that those are the best 20, but these are the 20 that I like the most and that I've researched, and that I work in a little team, and it's what we recommend to a customer. So we are active managers in the sense that we buy 20, 25 shares as opposed to just buying an index or an exchange traded fund. There's nothing wrong with either of them. That's it depends. If you've got time to do the research, to look for the companies, that's great. If not, there's nothing wrong with a passive investment.
Do we see a financial advisor, or do you trust your best friend? What would you say?
That's a difficult one. Financial advisor, but make sure that he is your best friend, or you trust him like your best friend. And I mean that. Make sure that you trust him like your best friend, and make sure he knows what he's doing. Test him. That's what I'm saying. Understand. Understand what you're doing. And if you don't understand something, keep asking why. Why are you doing that? And don't stop. And don't, what the biggest mistake is, that we all think that, even accountants or even people that I meet, professionals, they think that they're supposed to know things. They don't know things. So they're scared to ask. They're scared to embarrass themselves. Forget it. Do not ever apologize for asking a question. Never ever apologize for doing it. And if a person gets annoyed or irritated, well, then you know where to go. That's it.
That's it. Sell the mini. Sell the mini. What's a good credit score? And do you think we will be judged in COVID for this? Because now, let's admit, for 6 months we haven't been earning as much as we used to. Some people have been without work. You want to buy a new house, and they're asking you for 8 months bank statements. 2 of those months you've earned. The rest has been a COVID UIF payment or nothing.
It's a very difficult situation. I feel very passionate about this and very angry about this because I'm not going to answer it directly, rather indirectly, and because I'm angry at a lot of financial institutions. I'm angry at the government. And when I say government, I'm talking global governments. I'm angry at all governments because no one asked for this. We didn't ask for this. This has been imposed upon us. This is a health crisis, not a financial crisis. Everything was going fine. There was nothing wrong with the world's financial system until this COVID happened. And what happened is governments closed down economies, and they closed down perfectly good businesses, and they fired perfectly good people from perfectly good jobs. And these people and so many people now find themselves just drifting, under a huge pressure. And the idea of lockdown, or the idea of social distancing, was merely to cover a period until the hospitals could cope with an increase of disease or the infection rate, etc. What's happened is that many of the financial institutions have abandoned that liability or that obligation. It was their obligation, or the government's obligation, to see us through this period. And then also to ensure that there was enough money to get us through and pick us up again. That hasn't happened. And that's why I feel very, very angry. So if those people who were in perfectly good jobs, and were under pressure, can't get cover or can't get the help of the bank, then they are entitled to publicize it, to expose it, and to be angry, and protest, because it wasn't their fault. And think about the restaurants, the hairdressers, the events company, businesses like that, where people have just, been abandoned and no one's come to their help. Go to a bank and try to get a loan. You'll find you're filling out 10,000 pages, and having to beg and having to ask. It's not right. So that's my answer, if it makes sense.
It does completely. And I'm in entertainment, and it's scary to see how many people have got a talent and that's unable to use it.
No.
So terrible states. Thanks for your answer, and thanks for your honesty as well. How much should one save? So now you've got a little bit left and you are terrified of another pandemic. How much should be in your emergency fund? God forbid there is an emergency or another pandemic.
As much as you can put there. I don't want to scare you. and I think that an emergency fund or saving should be started as young as possible. Ilana, just think of this. I'm not asking ages, but I'm going to give hypothetical examples. What's everybody's ambition? Everybody's ambition is to retire early. Now, I want to retire when I'm 65 or 70, whatever it is. And today we live longer. So think, you get married at 25, okay? You get married at 25. Sorry. You start working properly at the age of 25. You do your education, you mess around. So 25, and you're going to retire at 65. That's 40 years, okay? And from 65, you can live another 20 years. Today, it's even 25 years. So that means the money you save in those 40 years has to last you for another 25 years. So you can do the maths. In other words, so that is the scariest, most daunting issue at all, is that, when you retire, so throughout your life, what happens is that we're never saving. I'll start saving when I'm 40. I'll start saving when I've paid off my house. And so it goes. And then suddenly you start saving at the age of 45 or 40. And by the age of 70, you haven't got enough money to retire. And the worst thing that could happen is that you live to 90 because you'll outlive your money. So when I say an emergency fund, there must always be that kind of money around. There's always going to be emergencies for you. You've got to work that out, how much it is. Just if your car breaks down, if the geyser bursts, God forbid, if you need to go to hospital or you need an emergency, whatever it is. So each person has to determine what the emergency fund. But I just give you that idea on saving, is that keep thinking of that. You're going to live a long time, and you want to make sure that you don't end up, begging your kids to look after you, because they're not going to look after you. They have to look after themselves, even though you looked after them. Hey.
I met a lady the other day, and she said to me, "Always be kind to your children." And I said to her, "Yeah, I am, but why do you say so?" And she said, "Because one day you'll grow old." Interesting, right? We talk about investing our money. Why, when there is the question around money, people are either really passionate about it or it really scares and terrifies people? Why is money such a sensitive and scary topic for some?
I think because everybody wants it. Everybody wants money, and they all believe that it's a road to happiness. Yeah, it helps. It helps, but I think the worst, sometimes it can bring out the worst of people. And in that same article that I wrote for Stan, when I joined the stock market, I joined in 1972. A seasoned campaigner, a gentleman, came to me and he says, "I want to tell you something, David." He says, uh, "You can fool around with a man's wife, but in other words, but never fool around with his money. In other words, but never touch his money." So that's when you say to me that people are passionate. You have no idea. You mentioned it. You can see when a person has a drink or on a golf course, the character comes out. Just wait until you have to handle people's money. It's an incredibly touchy subject and very, very close to people's hearts. And, one has got to be ultra sensitive about it because, yes, it can make a difference to your life. But where I want to change, is you don't need to inherit billions. You don't need to marry billions, and you don't need to be the brightest person around, and be the Apple, be Steve Jobs or a Jeff Bezos, etc. But just being sensible with your earnings, you can give yourself that financial security. And it sounds like I'm lecturing or being didactic, etc. But it's very important. You can get there, and you'll be surprised. I handle money, and I handle people's money. And one of the best stories I ever had, and I still see the gentleman today when I run around, and a chap came to me, and I never refuse anyone, Ilana. Anybody who phones me, I will look after it because it doesn't matter. And because we've got a solution for everybody. And a chap phoned me up as well, and he came into me, and he was so nervous. He had listened to me on the radio, and etc., and he brought his friend, etc. And he phoned me up to make an appointment, and he was a fireman. And he was a fireman, a very humble fireman, etc. And he came in to see me. And I didn't want to be. I spoke to him like I speak to everybody, and gave him a plan and spoke. And he had many millions of rands, millions. And when he said to me, and I asked him how much he had saved from his humble salary. He'd put away money every month, and over the years, it has built up to this, for him, a very large amount. And I still see him, I still bump into him, etc. And he's a wonderful chap. He hasn't got the confidence of most other people, etc. But he had the common sense to save and to read papers and to ask the right questions. When he came to see me, he knew exactly what he was talking about. So that's, it's very important that when it comes to money.
Speaking of money, it looks like someone who has got questions about his own money has just joined. Faisal, thank you so much for your question. He says, let's get into investing. And I think this is the one question that we will take because we're almost running out of time. He says, what type of shares can you name that will do well? So his time frame is till the end of December. What can you name in terms of the market? He also says, let's say about property shares. So we're looking towards the end of December. What can you forecast for our markets?
I would never do that. For the end of December, in 3 months, 4 months, you're crazy. The hardest thing to do on earth is to trade. That's it. And I have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow, let alone what's going to happen in the end of December. What you do know is what good companies are. You don't have to be a genius to establish what a good company is. And we use them all the time. They run in front of us, but we just don't want to recognize them. And another thing that I find, the more obscure something is, the more people throw money at it. The easier it is to understand, no, that's too easy. No, I'm not going to make money. So if I told you to buy Amazon, and I told you to buy Alphabet, and I told you to buy all the companies we use, people are going to say, no. But find some obscure company that does something that's never going to work, that they'll throw money at it. So is it Faisal? I wish I could, just look at those businesses that are in front of you. That's where you actually make money on the tried and tested, those who are just continue to generate good earnings, and they build on those and they compound those earnings all the time. You don't have to learn what a PE is and this ratio and that ratio. Yeah, you just have to know which are the good businesses and those that keep growing.
It's actually a really good question, and I know we need to wrap up, but Mendel is asking a great question. What is the medium to long term on property markets, i.e. residential, like in Cape Town and Durban coastal areas?
We're going through a rough time.
Yeah.
Property goes in cycles. And when you start to see too many cranes around, as we saw in Santon, when you had to, then you knew that we were coming to the end of the cycle. And unfortunately, it takes a long time for that cycle to change. So be very careful. Property companies, because of the state of this economy, and because of lockdown and the changes in the way that we're going to live our lives, I think just be very cautious of property. Of course, you need a house to live in. And if you're going to buy a house to live in, that's a different decision. That's a lifestyle decision. That's not an investment decision. And houses that you live in are never investment decisions. They costs. Just remember that. The house you live in is actually a cost center. The only time it becomes an investment is when your children send you off to the old age home and then they sell it and they keep the money. Then it's an investment. But until then, it's a cost center.
I'm going to ask a last question before we wrap up, because we've had some, and those were the two that stood out. So thank you, Faisal and Mendel, for your questions at this stage. If someone had to want an investment solution and they're sitting on cash that they want to bring to you, what's the best advice that you would give them in this interesting time of level one and where we are before a new year, but also in this crazy rest of 2020?
I think the one thing that look, South Africa's going on, we're under pressure, but on a global point of view, and even on the JSE, there's some wonderful avenues to invest in the global economy. And the one thing for sure is that equities beat all other kinds of investments. Simply that the people who run the business run it because they've got their own money invested in the company, and therefore, for a small amount of money, relatively small amount, you can get Jeff Bezos to work for you, or you can get Stephen Saar to work for you, you can get, who else is there? You can get Slish to work for you. You can get anybody to work for you, for a small investment. You become their partners and they're working. So I think that I'm an equity man and I believe 100% in equities. And when things go wrong, you can get out very fast as well. But no doubt over time, good companies, the returns on good companies far outreach anything else. And that includes all the Bitcoin people that are listening as well and are viewed in, and gold investors.
Last question before we go. When do you think in America world will South Africa recover?
Say that again, I lost you.
When do you think we will recover here in South Africa? Yeah.
It's South Africa's going to take a long time. Simply we need a proper plan. There's reforms that have to take place, and one's got to be realistic. But from the American economy, Jay Powell last night, unfortunately, thinks it's going to take longer, but it is going to recover. By this time next year, whatever this lockdown word, or this COVID-19, I think is going to be a distant memory. And, life will get back to normal. We'll adjust. For a few months, we'll be wearing masks, etc. As soon as confidence comes back, you'll know that life will return and people will start to spend and the animal spirits will come back. So I think we're already on the path to recovery. We're already starting to lift upwards. The trajectory might be flat, but it's already happening.
Could I ask
Last
you a question before?
I think Rabbi's back. How's it?
No, I've been there the whole time. I want to ask you a question. Will retail companies ever recover? You see, like J.C. Penney in America and Macy's and all the big retailers. Will they ever recover, or is that over?
Retail will recover, of course, but it'll be different businesses that recover. Amazon is retail. So I think you have to recognize the changes that are taking place. The bricks and mortar stores have to rediscover themselves or recalibrate the way. In fact, every company has to relook at its business model as we come out of this. No one can go back to doing what they did before. And even if you survived, I think it's very important that you relook and and reposition yourselves for what lies ahead. In fact, you should be doing that all the time, not just under lockdown. Businesses have to reestablish and refocus who they are and where they are. And that's an ongoing process. And that's why so many companies that were once at the top of their games are now dinosaurs. So it's an ongoing issue, and it applies to everybody. It applies to us. We've got to keep relearning. We've got to keep upskilling, and that applies to business as well. But retail's not going to die. It's as strong as it ever was. It's just that it's being redirected into other areas.
Yeah. Look, there's so many questions one can ask around this, and I see everyone's questions as well. Look, the one thing I would just go with what you've said tonight is that in this time, you're going to have to keep your ears and your eyes open to reinvent, because you can't practice what we did before lockdown. The other thing is, and I mean, trust is a big thing for me, even in business and teams and the things that we do, but you kind of put it out there that it's not that easy to trust. And also, we should maybe not part with our money that quickly. I think that was a valuable lesson that we learned tonight. Look, if you want to know more, you're going to have to follow the guy. So David Shapiro, find out all his articles that he's writing. He lives for money. So I think there's no better expert to follow and to learn from. And you heard it. If it's too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. David, that painting behind you, it's really nice. Is it a Pyrenees, that one? Yeah, no, the other one, the pink flowers.
This one?
Yes.
This is Patrick Caulfield, yeah.
No, that one, behind your head.
These are Cecilia Sash, yeah. Not Cecilia Sash, Lady Lipkin.
It's really nice.
I bought Town as well. Yeah, I'm a big art collector. This is my corner. I wish I could turn around and show you the others. That's my favorite.
It's great seeing you. Thank you so much for your time. Oh, you're going to turn it around. This is great too. We want to see. Thank you for your time tonight. We really, really appreciated this, and all the best to you, Shanatava, and may this be not just a crazy time for you, but may we learn new skills. Appreciate your time, David. Thank you.
Lovely to see you again.
Great seeing you.
Miss you at Chabad.
Well, I'm here. When are you coming back?
Lovely to see you. Okay.
I want to say to both of you. I want to say to both of you.
Yes.
The reason why I didn't introduce, because we wanted to get straight to you, but the truth of the matter is that God wants us to live life to its fullest. And God wants us to embrace life. And God blesses. Money is a blessing, not a curse, as long as we use it right to better our own lives and those around us. And so people are scared of money. And what the two of you did for us is that you introduced that it's important to make it work. So please, God should bless all our listeners and all our watchers with absolute blessing materialistically.